This week, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett shook up the U.S. Senate primary race, the Democrat deciding to launch campaign for the seat. She previously said she would only enter the contest if polling showed she can win. Well, the team at the Barbara Jordan Public Policy Research and Survey Center at Texas Southern University down in Houston is giving us a glimpse of what voters are thinking. Here to talk to us about that survey is Mark Jones. He's a professor at Rice University in Houston and co-author of the TSU study. Thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us, Mark.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get to the big headline. We've got Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, State Representative James Tallarico. What are the numbers showing?
So we show a vote intention among likely Democratic primary voters of 51% for Crockett and 43% for Tallarico. That's an 8% gap with 6% undecided. So Crockett has a lead, but it's not an insurmountable lead for Tallarico.
All right, that's something obviously that he wants to hear. I think one of the things that I really took away from the survey, looking at what you all found, was really the gaps, right, between who's supporting Crockett, who's supporting Tallarico. When we talk about gender, this to me was one of the most telling gaps between the two candidates. Talk to us about where Texas women say, who they say they're going to back in this, Democratic voters versus the men.
Well, we saw that among women, an overwhelming majority favor Crockett over Tallarico, and among men, an overwhelming majority, or at least a strong majority, favor Tallarico over Crockett. The gap is especially large, among Latino women and Black women. It's a little less among white women. But then the reverse, Crockett has the advantage among Black men, but Tallarico has a very substantial advantage among Latino and white men.
When you think about that and just the trends that you've seen in covering Texas politics, do you find that to be odd given the fact that you have a woman and a man in this race?
Well, no, in the Democratic primary, we often see this. And one thing among Democratic primary voters, women represent the largest proportion. Somewhere between usually 56 and 58% of Democratic primary voters are women, and around 42 to 44% are men. So there's always a substantial female majority in the Democratic primary. And we do see these gender splits quite often, especially when we're in a party primary where voters don't have the party label to use, and therefore they're basing their choice much more on the candidates than on their partisanship.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting for us to hear. The other thing, and you alluded to this a little bit, is that there's also a race gap when it comes to these numbers. Talk to us about the gap and what you see there with Crockett versus Tallarico.
One thing that jumps out is that there's overwhelming support for Jasmine Crockett among African-American Democratic primary voters. 9 out of 10 intend to vote for her, 1 out of 10 intend to vote for Tallarico. Then if you flip it around, though, Tallarico does have an advantage. It's more modest, but it's in the low double digits, 10 points among Latinos and 13 points among white voters. So he has an advantage there. But the reason that Crockett is ahead is that she has such strong support among African-American voters, who account for a little more than 1 in 5 of Democratic primary voters.
You know, when you think about this race and the challenge that any Democrat would face in launching a statewide race, it's name recognition, right? Talk to me about how many people recognize the names James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett.
Well, here we're focused on these Democratic primary voters, and we find that 94% know who Jasmine Crockett is. They have an opinion of her, and it's almost universally favorable. On the other hand, only 77% know enough about Tallarico, and there you have about 1 in 5 Democratic primary voters who just don't know much about him. Those that do know about him have a very favorable opinion, but with 1 in 5, Tallarico still has some room to grow in that he has the opportunity now to introduce himself to those voters and potentially improve his vote intention as they learn more about him. Because we do know that when people learn about Tallarico, they almost uniformly like him.
Yeah, that is good. It all is so interesting to see. I feel like this is going to be one of the top races to watch during this election season. All right, Mark Jones, Rice University professor and co-author of that TSU poll. We thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me.